Welcome, Wuxia Warriors and Wildcards. We have a exciting show for you today. We've got Darrell Hayhurst right before he runs off to Gen Con. So welcome, Darrell.
Hi, everyone.
Our next game changer is a doozy. It is an awesome product. We're excited to show it to you guys. It is called Legend of Ghost Mountain. So, Darrell, tell us, what is Legend of Ghost Mountain?
So, the Legend of Ghost Mountain came from an idea from Shane Hensley. And it's something he had quite a while ago and wanted to do, but never had the time. And when I was coming on board earlier in the year, Moonlighting, we were talking about it. This is kind of my jam anyway, and I got to run with it and develop it, and over time it kind of grew and became this new monster thing that we're doing, which should be hopefully very fun. And the basic story is you've got a gate to hell, to the land of the dead, and when things are normal, when you die, all souls go through the gate, and there they get reincarnated or punished or whatever you might expect there. And there are the Ghost Wardens, who are an order dedicated to protecting this gate from anything that goes wrong in the land of the living. And if things go wrong in the land of the dead, they can step in and smooth things out. And of course, when the adventure picks up, something has gone very, very wrong, and the dead are not doing what they're supposed to, and there's problems in the land of the living, and it's up to the Ghost Wardens to get it all solved. And by the end of it, you've got armies of zombies, armies of ghosts, armies of the living, and it's this massive epic clash. Martial arts, magic, mayhem, monsters. If it starts with an M, we got it.
So I take it from the styling on the art. This is going to be like mythical, ancient China inspired.
Yeah, it is inspired. It is inspired by wuxia, absolutely. Like it's not ancient China, right? Like it's a unique fantasy setting, but the trappings, the inspiration is clearly from those kinds of stories, which so many of us love, right? Like no matter what. And is such a good fit for Savage Worlds as a game system. It's like, absolutely, we should do this. People have been wanting something like this for quite a while.
So Darrell, we're calling this a Savage Saga. So what is a Savage Saga? What sets it apart from kind of the other things, other products people are used to purchasing?
Yeah, like so, and people know plot points and love plot points, hopefully, right? And this kind of started life as a plot point, but where it diverts, right? Like the structure is what you would expect as a Savage Worlds fan, but what makes a saga a little bit different is, one, it is meant as it's a complete story. So it's not just a sandbox, it's not just a setting that you're going to be expected to go in forever. It's like, well, no, this is the legend of Ghost Mountain, and a legend has a beginning, middle, and end, and you're going to play through that. And the other thing that's interesting about it is, because we created characters specifically for it, their narratives are woven through that saga. So you can play your own character and find ways to tie into those narratives, but if you play the actual archetypes themselves, it will be like, oh no, this is your family that's under pressure in this part, or that's your rival who you're going to meet in this city. And then pay those off. Like it builds and builds and builds to where by the end, every warden's had their own kind of personal storyline that finds a conclusion within the tale. And it also lets us do fun things like the guy that can't swim. Like, well, we're going to have a battle in the middle of a lake. Guess who's going to have a real problem here? So we can tie very distinctly into their hindrances and their background and make them really feel part of the saga.
So it's more curated than a pure sandbox kind of setting.
Yeah, a little bit. And like I say, and we want to remind people, you can build your own characters, and we've got tools to continue the adventure after the saga if you want. But really, this is the main idea is we've got this cool story, let's tell it, and you're going to be a part of it. Like, you are the legend of Ghost Mountain.
Awesome. So tell us about the Ghost Wardens, who are kind of
these characters. These characters again. So each of them, the Wardens themselves, they get their power from emotion. Like emotion's what makes the dead do what they do. It's also what gives the Ghost Wardens power over themselves and over the dead. And the most expressive emotions that give them power, these 5 are fear, anger, disgust, joy, and sorrow. And they'll let you role play those out, to get extra oomph out of them. But you've got Flying Fox, who is kind of the avatar of fear, a paragon of fear. And she's got the bow, and she tries to stay away from combat. But she also comes from an aristocratic background. So she's got options for diplomacy that a lot of the other characters don't. You've got the Rat Chopper, who's anger. And he grew up a thug. He's always been a thug. He's kind of got the soldier background. And he'll call anyone that he wants to a rat. And he's going to chop them, take them down. But another thing about Wardens is what unlocks their abilities, why they've got more going on than people who try to become a warden and fail, is they have these tragedies that they need to redress. And so, like, for Rat Chopper, his mom ended up going to hell kind of because of his actions. And so he's desperate to get her out of hell. He's got to kind of redeem himself to get her out of the dire straits that she's in. He's had that vision. He's seen what's happened to her.
So I'm liking what I'm hearing so far. It's about how like the arc of these character stories isn't solely about doubling down on their emotion to gain their powers, but it's also about having to face that other side of that emotion to advance their plot. That's pretty hot.
Exactly. And the great thing is, because it's Ghost Mountain, we can actually go to hell and resolve some of these, like, oh yeah, that person died. That's okay. We're going to be able to, work them in later, in the middle, we've got Keep Away. And the great thing is, we talk about this being inspired by, wuxia, Chinese archetypes, but Keep Away is not from that place, right? He is what they would call internally an invader. He's someone that came in and they were maybe doing some raiding and some piracy and, as invaders do. And his whole deal is he thought he was just doing what he was told, right? He was just following orders, and has come to find that the afterlife doesn't care if you were just following orders or not. Like, those deeds are on your soul. So he knows he is bound for hell. Like, he's going into the hell of 1,000 needles, and he wants to redeem himself. He needs to change his ways. But his emotion is disgust. So he's just not happy with anything around him. And Keep Away, it's like whether he named himself or other people named him, like, that's him. Like, keep everything at arm's length, and he's got the nice long pole arm to do that. Then we've got the Fire Hand, Zhao, and the whole thing with the Fire Hand is she's the joy, right? She's coming from a pretty good place overall, but she also has the darkest backstory of anyone because she comes from a thing called the Fire Cult. It's another outsider religion practiced in the West, the cult of the Holy Flame. And for her to get her powers, it comes from fire. It comes from people being burned. And she didn't do it herself. She became kind of this figurehead, a fire maiden for the cult. And they're burning people for her. And she's like, that's not cool. Like, that's not good. She's getting the power from it, but she doesn't want to be the figurehead of this holy flame. And when she escapes from that, where she goes is Ghost Mountain, where she can put those powers to good use. And then our last guy is the Wavering Blade, Sorrow. And he's got, every kind of tragic backstory trope that you can think of in terms of, like, oh, they killed his master and everyone in his school died and his lover died, like the whole thing. And he's been practicing this style of swordsmanship the whole time, and he thinks he's cursed. Like, he thinks that all of these things happened because there's a supernatural force following him, and he wants to break that curse. He wants to stop it and get out from under it so he can feel something other than pain.
Ooh, and I wonder if he'll have to give up his skills as a swordsman.
Right? I wonder how that could work out. Or maybe some of the people he thought was dead aren't.
Ooh, good. Oh, good. I don't know, folks. I haven't read ahead. So tell us, Darrell, what kind of adversaries and challenges and baddies are we going to be facing?
Right, more monsters than you can shake a stick at. I mean, and literally you'll be shaking a stick at them. But, so we've got 3 main categories, right? You've got the living, you've got the dead, and then you've got demons. And so the living, you've got a lot of factions inside the setting, all vying for power. And the ghost wardens have to exist in that political world, a little bit like Game of Thrones, right? The keepers of the northern gates or whatever. It's like, well, they exist and they need help to exist, but they're not exactly well liked. No one wants to see a ghost warden show up because that means there's problems.
Ooh, yeah.
Right. But when you need them, you got to have them. And meanwhile, they don't want to deal with politics. But if there's a rebellion going on, if there's, all this infighting, they're going to have to take a side, even though they're not supposed to. And that's going to be one of the major beats of the story is, do you take a side? And if so, who? Do you side with the invaders? Because they're not from around here, but they're pretty strong. They might be able to fight these monsters, and they're not as backstabbing, as some of your local friends are. Like, which side do you choose and why, and how those ramifications express themselves throughout the adventure. And you got a lot of potential allies. One of the great things about Savage Worlds is it's really easy when you recruit people to be like, great, here's some cards. You've got these guys. You've got these 5 soldiers. You picked up this princess along the way, you poor people. Right now, you got a princess with you. Here's what she does, for you and against you. Then you got the dead, and the dead come in 2 main varieties, and that's the corpses and ghosts, right? Because the body is one thing, the spirit's the other. And when you die, they separate. And that's why one dead person could be up to 2 undead creatures.
So there's a possibility that we will have on the battlefield someone's angry corpse and their vengeful spirit.
Yeah, exactly. Those are 2 different things, right? And the interesting,
glorious.
And the interesting thing about the dead too is the unruly ones are charged with this emotion, but that doesn't necessarily make them evil. And one of the things that the ghost wardens need to navigate is their job isn't just to put down the dead or send them to hell. Their job is to fix the problem. A ghost might be upset because they were murdered. And you could just bust the ghost and send them through the gate. Or you could investigate what happened. It turns out they have a living relative who is equally at risk of being murdered. And if you don't take that extra step, if you don't find out why the dead are acting up, you're going to miss this whole other thing and just create more, unruly dead to have to deal with later. And so there's that. Some of them are absolutely pure evil. Some of them are just in a tough space, and the ghost wardens have to figure out which are which.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then there's demons, right? And demons are just bad news for everybody. And there are playable races other than humans, and they're called devils. And there's a big distinction between demons and devils, where devils are mortals like anyone else. They just look weird, but demons, oh no, they are unnatural forces. They're not the dead. They are evil. They are from hell, and they want to disrupt the natural order of things. And know your devils versus your demons becomes very important.
Pick your battles, but also, here's a little taxonomy chart. How to identify.
Yeah, and we talk about that in the book, right? And most, all the ghost wardens have an occult skill, even if it's D4, just so, because they've gotten some training on this. Some are better than others.
So I think it's very revolutionary that you have chosen this emotion kind of, the Eight Motif, which I think distinguishes other kind of approaches to wuxia that very much in the schools of martial arts that very much either pick elements, like fire, water, or maybe animals. As kind of designing theories. This emotion one I think is relatively, not relatively, it's very creative. So
it is, and this came straight from Shane, right? This was part of his original idea, part of his pitch was okay, everyone knows the animal styles of Kung Fu based on the animal emotions. It's been done. We don't really need to do that. And yeah, like I said, the elements people have seen a lot thanks to Avatar and things like that. But because Shane thinks in terms of the table. We were what would you do at the table that would make you distinct? And that's where emotion comes from, because it's like, all right, I can talk about fire and water and all that, but when I'm doing disgust or fear, like that's something that viscerally I can do at the table. And then you tie all of your martial elements into it. So you might have like the sorrowful palm, or the frightened quick step, which is your runaway technique or whatever. And we encourage you, like, man, tie these in, and the wavering blade, his style of swordsmanship is completely based on this sadness that he feels. And then the cool thing is, you talk about chi and other things, that idea of spiritual or internal energy. I mean, we use the word a lot, and so people kind of get it, but also people don't really understand what it is. But emotion, like charging up your emotion, like draining your emotion and having the power come from that, it's a little more like visceral. Like you feel that more, what you're doing. And it's easier at the table to be like, all right, you're really laying into the anger there. I'm going to give you more power for your martial arts, to tie into that. And the different ways that you can express those emotions. And we based it on the chi edge that you see in Savage Worlds Adventure Edition. But whereas that one's a veteran ability, emotion is novice. You need to be Ghost Wardens to do it. And it's a weird edge, right? But you get it. And then you get basically the basic things that chi do. And then from there, you can take edges that refine your emotions. You start becoming a paragon of one of those 5 big ones. And you get new abilities based on it. Like when you got disgust, you can physically push people away. Whether... And, your trapping might vary, right? Like it could be you do something disgusting and they reel back. Or it could be a wave of energy that they feel... that just ties into their feelings and they pull away. And all of them have kind of a more active use and a passive use to get into that hot, cold, yin yang idea that's very prevalent in wuxia and martial arts fiction. I think we've talked, my favorite is on the fear side, yes, you can use it to scare people, but you can also use it to empower yourself. So when there would be a fear check, instead of making the fear check, you say, okay, I fail and I'm taking the adrenaline result from the fear table, right? So you get like essentially supercharged for a round, when everyone else, like, okay, they might make the fear check and bounce it and be like, I'm stoic, it's fine, I can take it. But you like go full Scooby-Doo and get double speed and an extra action and stuff. And it's great. And it really feels right when those come up.
Yeah, so I love how that works mechanically. So the 5 schools, they're all like locked behind edges. Like, so edges is the mechanic of choice that...
Yeah. You get your base emotion for being a ghost warden, because that's part of their training, right? And why only the people with a lot on the line make it through this very difficult training, because they have to have that raw emotion there to be able to tap into.
So if the way this is designed, if they have access to these as a novice character, does the story begin with them as novices and then?
Oh, yeah, you start as veterans,
okay.
right? Oh,
interesting.
Like, yeah, this is hardcore martial arts. I'm throwing 20 bad guys at a time at you, and they're not scrubs, right? And when you're fighting the big monsters, they're big monsters. You are going to need every single one of those advances, and you'll get more as you go. You'll need them. It's tough, but it also feels like martial arts action. You want those big numbers, and you're just mowing through them and being tactically clever and making the best use of your emotion and your ability, your own special abilities, that all of the different wardens bring something separate to the conflict, and you don't need them all. And again, you can substitute your own and hopefully fill the niches of the existing ones, but and we've got things if you don't. If you're like, okay, now you're not here. All right, here's what happens if this particular person is not present and things go south, right? You can find your own creative way to get around this. But.
Damn it, we needed the fear character and we don't have it.
It is, well, because like literally she's got family in important places. And sometimes that's really good because it gives you a leg up. Sometimes it's really bad because you're like, oh man, so this, this fort is under all this pressure, but like it's her cousin who's in charge there. And under normal circumstances, you'd be like, whatever, those guys are on their own, but it's her cousin. Maybe we should take a side trip and go help them out, And if not, her cousin's going to be waiting in hell and really mad. Thanks for the leg up.
And that's also, I think it's really clear that mechanic here, the fact that we've kind of got the scales of justice kind of thing going on where, there's several characters are on redemptive arcs, other characters are on kind of restorative arcs, and the fact that there is going to be that actual dissent and interaction there, I think is really kind of exciting. And there's a story here being told that the characters can interact.
It's a big story, but it is a complete story. Like, at the end, you're in a specific spot, and you feel like, okay, like we did it. Like either everything's destroyed or we've saved the world. We're good, And then maybe we'll revisit that in the future with a new saga. But until then, like, this is meant to be a complete and satisfying experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm excited for it. It's done so well in Horde Headstone Hill as kind of a pre-saga, right?
Yeah, exactly. This is a direction that we've been moving towards. And when we first came up with this idea, it was actually much more like Headstone Hill, and it was originally going to be like a 32-page booklet that we would put out, and we would expand to more booklets as you went. But as we did it, we're like, wow, we're liking this. We want to do more, but this is not the format for it. Like, it needs to be all together, and we need to complete this so that people have the journey there at their fingertips.
That's awesome. I think it'd be very satisfying for GMs and players to have that kind of thing in Savage Worlds. So tell us, sir, what's in the box? Like, how do we make this happen? What tools are at the Game Master's tips to tell this tale? And
so, not counting any potential stretch goals, right? And we're trying to make this worth it, even if we don't get any stretch goals, right? It's actually worth more than what we're selling it for, but it's a good number, and we just wanted to put it out there, right? But you get the book, which is 128 page, has all the character creation stuff, has the entire saga in it, more monsters than you can shake a stick at, and these special abilities all mentioned. It's got the campaign map, which is the Central Empire, we call it, which would translate to. Yeah, well, which would translate to Zhonghua, which is China, but it's not. It's the Central Empire. Okay, it's a joke, but for those that understand it, it's a joke.
And it's gorgeous too.
It is. It's a cool map, right? And it is not China, right? It's its own fantasy setting. And there's little places and nooks and crannies for adventure all over it, and it's not just a trapping, right? Like, as the campaign unfolds, your group, your wardens, you got to choose. Where are you going? What battles are you fighting? What gates are open? What are closed? And so, like, you want that ability to see, where are we at? Where are we going? How far away is the capital? Where the heck is the inevitable army, the big bad guys right now? It's a good tool for that. Then we've got the archetype folios. So the stats are in the book. We're not selling the book separately, at least as part of the campaign, but eventually you'll probably be able to get it like at the store or whatever. So we've got the characters in there, but the folios are really nice because they've got everything. It's a fold piece of paper with the art on it and all the stats and their backstory. And like, I've printed some up for the Gen Con game and the other conventions I'm going to run it at. And man, they're gorgeous. Like, I can't wait to get like the real ones, right?
Yeah, and folks have gotten their hands on the exact same concept for Rifts now with the Atlantis delivery and the dossiers. Very much exactly the same product, the nice thicker cardboard, glossy fold. I love the cards. The cards are very great for like allies and adversaries.
Right.
But since the characters are they're meatier, right? There's a lot more information that we would put on a card if we could. I'm like, well, then we can. We'll make it
exactly
a dossier.
Right. Plus, they're veterans, so even if we were going bare bones, it's like, you need a pretty big card for everything these guys can do. And then, like, the big one is the 6 sheets of the pawns, like the big punch outs with the nice, steady bases. And like, we wrestled with how to do this because there's big action in this. We have these massive set pieces. We have very specific, sort of monsters, and we finally got it, to all fit in 6 sheets, which is a lot. Like if you like other products, I have like 3. So like this is a lot of pawns. And even if you've got miniatures like I do, I can't wait to have the pawns because I can actually carry them to conventions much easier, and they're specific. Like I don't have to be like, oh, this miniature is pretty close to Firehand Jowl. Like she's good enough. I'm like, no, here's Firehand Jowl. Bam, we'll put her down. The maps. We have 2 double-sided maps because when we get into these set pieces, things get tactical. That's what we like. Like that's part of that kung fu actions. You got to have the places where you're fighting. Some of them are outside. Some of them are palaces or cityscapes, and others are in hell itself. So
hot damn!
All right, we're going to hell, everybody. Pack your bags.
Wow, man, the cover art is really hot. It looks fantastic on the box mock-up. But tell us about what we're looking at in this cover art.
Well, right. So yeah, and it's fantastic. And there was actually an older image that Shane commissioned way back when he had the idea. And we've developed it a lot since then, otherwise we'd still be using it. But actually, and this one's even better, right? But here you can see, like, this is the approach to Ghost Mountain itself. And you've got our 5 wardens, on the steps defending themselves from the inevitable army, the risen dead who are not happy with how things are going. They're led by a rebellious general he was betrayed and did not leave things where they stood, and now all the dead everywhere are starting to rise up. In a lot of the tropes, the stability of the real world goes hand in hand with the stability of the spiritual world. So if there are rebellions happening in hell, then things are going to be going bad on Earth too, and vice versa. So as the situation degrades, in the real world, so then do people trapped in hell and demons have more and more ability to break free and come into the real world and make trouble. You've got ghosts in there too, and then behind you've got the dragon, and of course, anyone that kind of knows their folklore would be like, the Eastern mythology that we're basing this on. Dragon's a good thing. Like these would be an ally. This is a benefit. But if you look closely, you can see there's something not right. So we know the role the dragons should take, but that's not the role that ends up happening in Ghost Mountain, and that's very specifically done. And it's part of the mystery of why things have gone so wrong.
Oh, good stuff.